friend and a great broadcaster. Good morning, Vince. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me, and I'm glad you had a great first hour, but starting with me, we're about to put an end to that for the second hour.
Well, I know how good you are, and I know you'll tell it like it is. So if there's some Tennessee fans out there listening, they may want to turn the dial for a moment, but I'm sure Alabama fans are really interested in what you have to say. Hey, let's just pick it up, man. I mean, this Tennessee team was rolling. I had won 8 games in a row, and everything looked good. You went into Athens, and in the first half things were good, and in the second half got stepped on, and then what nobody could see coming, Kentucky doesn't just win in Knoxville for the first time in 36 years. They blow the doors off the Vols in an embarrassing fashion, 34-7. Jared Guarantano looked like a freshman quarterback right out of high school. It just went off the rails, and Jimmy Brumbaugh gets fired. I don't know. Did he throw some interceptions, Vince? But Pruitt says he's taken over coaching the defensive line, which I've never been a big fan of a head coach also coaching a position. But that's where we're at this morning. And I know those 8 wins seem like a distant memory for Pruitt and the Vols. What's going on there in Knoxville?
Yeah, a lot there that you touched on and spot on all of it. I'll try to be quick on hitting on some of those points. First off, the turnaround really is based on one thing, and that's the turnovers. Tennessee did not turn the ball over for the first 10 quarters of the season. Going into that Georgia game, they're one of only 5 FBS teams that had not turned the ball over. I mean, that was really the biggest reason why they were 2-0, because they didn't really play great. They played inconsistent. They beat lesser teams and kind of out-talented them. First half, obviously, went into the half against Georgia, no turnovers, 21-17 lead, things are going well. Then 3 turnovers in the second half against Georgia, 4 more in the first half against Kentucky. So you go from no turnovers in the first 10 quarters of the season to 7 in the next 4 quarters. Just disaster. No chance to win after that. And then you see players just taking the wind out of their sails. After that, a second of 2 pick sixes on consecutive drives. And people have been there, done that. That's the reason why Guarantano got benched several times last year. Inevitably, the backup would come in and not do a good enough job turning the ball over also, and then they go back to Guarantano, and then he would oftentimes regain that gig and do well for a stretch. So really, there shouldn't be that kind of play from a fifth-year player. I mean, not seeing things, staring down receivers, not protecting the football in the pocket and on throws. Just really no use for it. You talked about the losing to Kentucky. Fans are so upset right now. And this is kind of comparable to the Georgia State season opening loss last year.
Jeez.
Because it doesn't matter, Gary, and you know this, being in Alabama, when you're a fan of a prominent program, when you play teams that don't have the football history that you do, it doesn't matter what their record is or anything like that. Fans will not accept a loss to them.
That's right.
And that's the case with Kentucky. And so Tennessee not only lost to Kentucky for the first time in Knoxville since 1984, it was the largest margin of defeat in Knoxville since 1893, which was the first game of the series when Kentucky won 56-0, or actually known as Kentucky A&M at the time. And prior to that, there was only one other game that was a 20-plus margin of victory, 21 points in 1924. So not only does Tennessee never lose to Kentucky at home, they've never lost since the first game by that kind of margin. I mean, both teams were in garbage time with freshmen in the fourth quarter. You haven't lost to this team at home since 1984, and both teams are in garbage time playing young players with them blowing you out at home. I mean, fans just not accepting that. Jimmy Brumbaugh, you made the joke that he'd throw interceptions. It was surprising that they made a move after only 8 months on the job and 4 games.
And no spring, yeah.
Yeah, no spring. And then he wasn't, not only was that surprising, but if there were going to be moves to the coaching staff, everyone's been pointing to Chris Weinke, who obviously people there know and has not, we haven't seen development of the quarterback position with any of those QBs. Now, I think there's a little bit of on the talent there. I don't think Maurer, Shroud are SEC level quarterbacks. Guarantano kind of is what he is, I think, at this point. And then the one guy you're hoping he could develop is a highly rated true freshman in Harrison Bailey, but he was an early enrollee who didn't get spring, didn't get the off season, missed a bunch of time to contact tracing in the preseason. He only had 10 snaps of team 11-on-11 plays during preseason camp. So now they're holding these Sunday young player scrimmages so they can get him caught up and get the young players that missed a lot of time caught up. So they're trying to fast track him to get him ready. But that's been kind of the dilemma, is he would be the guy that you need to develop, but they haven't been able to do it at the speed that they normally would. So, and I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of coaches at specific position groups. I'm not really a fan of the play calling too, but there's been cases where that's been successful some places. But being their position group, Pruitt says it won't take away from it. I don't see how it can't. So this is a lot of things that have gone from second longest win streak in the country just a couple of weeks ago to now they're facing a crossroads like they did when they had the doors blown off them in Gainesville last year and had to have a team meeting and eventually turn things around. They're kind of getting quickly to that place this year.
Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal in Knoxville and the Vol Network with us. So it sounds like on what you just said, based on what you just said, Vince, that Tennessee just doesn't have many options at the quarterback position, and you expect Garantano to run out there on Saturday afternoon against Alabama to be the starter.
I would think so. The only thing is Pruitt did mention that this Sunday, unlike the previous Sunday where Bailey took all the snaps, they split the snaps in that young player scrimmage on Sunday between Brian Maurer, who's been dealing with a hamstring injury. He's also had concussions and a lot of personal things in his life to deal with. He's a kid from the state of Florida, the 3-star. And when he played last year, just too many turnovers. I think 5 interceptions, below 50% completion. He's not a long-term answer, but it's possible that if they want to put somebody out there and they don't want to ruin Bailey, or if they don't feel like he's ready, that it could be Maurer if they feel like he has gotten enough work. My guess is it would be Garantano, and then maybe they're preparing Maurer in case they need to go to him if things go bad, and not throw Bailey out there against Alabama, and maybe save him for the bye week after Alabama, and you have 2 weeks to prepare, get reps for Arkansas. But, Brock Eward, Fox analyst, he talked at the Knoxville Quarterback Club yesterday, and he was asked about the game plan against Alabama, and he started with, I don't know if I can put Jared out there this week. And so, maybe they've gotten to that point of no return where Jim Chaney's like, I can't call plays. We can't do this. We need to maybe rely on the run game and then put somebody else out there so at least we have some hope. I don't know if that's the direction they're going, but their hands are tied behind their back, and this is the wrong week to be limited at that quarterback position and with play calling.
Vince, let's talk about this pickle that Tennessee's in with regards to Alabama. They haven't won in the series since 2006. The close games have been in Tuscaloosa. When they have come close, it seems like it's been at Bryant-Denny. They've had their doors blown off in Knoxville. Now you're coming off an embarrassing loss. You do have the bye coming after this game. Is this a sellout game? Meaning, if you're Pruitt, you say, hey, listen, we're not worried about last week. We don't have to play next week. We'll get to Arkansas when we get to them. Let's do everything we can. This is our Super Bowl. Does he try to get them to buy in like, anything can happen. Let's go out and let's play this one game. Let's not worry about anything else and try to have one of those magical moments. Do you think that's overhyping it, or do you think if you're Pruitt, knowing what this game means, knowing you played at Alabama, knowing why you were brought in there, knowing you haven't won in the series in 14 years, do you just put everything into this game and not worry about anything prior or after?
Well, Gary, I think, and you probably know this, a lot of the listeners there probably know this too because of the time that Jeremy Pruitt spent there. I think he's more wired to sell out to try to win this game rather than think long-term.
Me too.
Hey, let's get through this game and then think about the future of the quarterback and all that. I don't think that's the way. That's his DNA. And, oh, by the way, if they were to either shock the world and win this game or be very competitive in this game like they were last year for a good period of time, I think that is something that you could build off of even if you get the L. So I think that they'll go after it, hope they can correct enough mistakes, maybe see some things in Alabama giving up points and things like that, even though I think there's some circumstances in the points and that Bama is giving up. And then just go after it and see what they can do. You have no chance if you're throwing pick sixes. So I think they got to get that right decision. And who knows, maybe they will say, hey, this kid has the upside to where if we're going to do anything special, it would be with this kid versus trying to just run the ball and slow the game down, things like that. So we'll see. But I think he is more likely to go after it. They've got so much talent on the offensive line.
Yeah, they do.
Start 4 or 5 stars and a 6th-year center, a transfer from Alabama, and Brandon Kennedy. I mean, it's crazy. And that's really what's hurt them is they haven't been able to just dominate teams enough at the line of scrimmage to where they can say, okay, screw this. We're not going to throw out routes. We're just going to run down your throat and do something about it. And with the talent that's there, they should be able to do that, but they haven't. If they figure that out, then I think they could have more options to sort of mask that position until they get it right.
Yeah, well, that O-line needs to step up on Saturday, and they're going against the defensive line. It's played a little better in the second half against Georgia, but they've been moved around and pushed around a little bit. So there is hope. Let me ask you before we close it out about Pruitt. Again, seem to have things turned around, and the first half against Georgia, you're feeling good, and since then the wheels have come off, as I said. This is a weird year with COVID, and all these coaches. But, let's say he does get blown out at home on Saturday and this season goes south. Is he in trouble? Is his job in jeopardy?
Not with Tennessee. With fans, he will be, but not with Tennessee. It's a different timetable.
Right.
It's the same, I think, a lot of times with fan bases. Especially here at Tennessee, we've seen it before. The Butch Jones timetable with the fans was much sooner than the 5 years that it took for UT to make that decision. And I don't know if it'll be 5 years or 4 years or whatever, but Philip Fulmer, his legacy as athletic director, because it was his hire, is directly tied to the success of Jeremy Pruitt as a football coach.
I'm with you.
So he is not going to be in a hurry. He wants that to work out for many reasons. And fans are already talking about Pruitt being Butch Jones or worse. They're already throwing out the contract extension that he got and lack of development. And the development issue was something that wasn't the case last year, where a lot of players got better. This year, there's very few guys on this roster that you can point to and say, he's gotten better, he's gotten better, he's gotten better, even through their 2 wins. You really didn't see a whole lot of that. That's an issue. So, barring some sort of scandal or something really bad, I don't see him being in a hot seat next year to where you got to do something, significant when the East or anything like that. But and then there's the impact in recruiting too, Gary. If that falls apart, I think that can kind of speed things up. He also has the advantage of not having the attendance bottom out, which oftentimes does speed up the clock.
True.
To make a coaching change because they're only at 25% capacity. So a lot of things still working in his favor to where, and he'll make other coaching changes too before he's the guy to go.
Final question, and we see upsets in college football. That's what makes it fun. The best team doesn't always win. North Carolina went in unbeaten at number 5 to Doak Campbell on Saturday against a pitiful Florida State team and got beat. Now, this may be a little more of a stretch, but do you give Tennessee a shot? Say 1 to 10, on a scale. Do you give Tennessee a shot on Saturday at all?
Well, like you mentioned, Gary, it's 2020, and we've seen more stunning results than that. I mean, there's the history of it too, which I think would catch a lot of attention. But look, Kentucky had history of not winning in Knoxville.
That's right.
Look what they did. I don't see that happening. I wouldn't predict it. I'd say 1 or 2. There's a chance, but it's not a very good one. I would think it's the highest probability is them getting the doors blown off, like we've seen a number of times in Knoxville, more so than an upset. And maybe it'll be somewhere in between, but they've got a chance because they've got. I still think they have really good coaches that have been making good adjustments typically, even though the third quarters haven't been good for Tennessee this year. And you never know. If they put that O-line together, two really good backs, which I can't understand why they don't play the two of them together. What we heard from Jim Chaney in the offseason, well, if we don't play Gray and Chandler together, then something's wrong, or I had a heart attack or something. We haven't seen it at all.
Amazing.
Like your two best players on offense, it's like Kamara and Hurd. They wouldn't play them together very much. Why?
I always love it when coaches say this is what we're going to do, and then they don't do it. It's always just driven me crazy, and it happens a lot in the coaching business. Great stuff, Vince. Folks, you can follow if you want to keep up with Tennessee. It's a great follow at Vince Sports. Also, you still doing MMA stuff?
Yeah, still am. A little lighter schedule these days with COVID, but they're doing shows. So, yeah, we're still doing a high school football on Friday nights, and, yeah, still very busy.
Always on the go. Thanks a lot, Vince.